Sócrates on meditation vertical bar. Why you can't meditate. Have you noticed how meditation has become trendy? Apps, digital gurus, quick courses, all promising peace in just a few minutes. But what almost nobody tells you is that most people simply can't meditate. And it's not due to a lack of technique or discipline. It's because our minds are so overwhelmed with stimuli, so hungry for dopamine, that silence becomes unbearable. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But how can we examine our lives if we can't stand to be alone with our thoughts for even 5 minutes? Here lies the contradiction. We seek virtue, yet flee from reflection. We crave wisdom, but fear self-discovery. And perhaps, just perhaps, what you'll discover here will explain why you don't truly meditate. More than that, it might change everything you believe about yourself and your soul. The invisible noise. Imagine living in a chaotic marketplace where voices shout deals non-stop, bells ring endlessly, and different songs echo at the same time. It's hard to find peace in such a scene, right? Well, that marketplace is your mind when you try to meditate after hours of scrolling through social media, notifications, and digital comparisons. Silence feels impossible because, in reality, there's never been silence, just an invisible noise you've been carrying within yourself. In our daily lives, this is evident. Just open your phone and you're swept away by a whirlwind of stimuli. Likes, messages, short videos. Your brain, conditioned to this flood, rejects any attempt to pause. The consequence? Growing anxiety and an inability to confront the emptiness within. Socrates would remind us that true questioning begins when we dare to step away from distractions. Aristotle would say, "Virtue lies in the middle, neither too much stimulation nor complete isolation." The problem is that we forget this balance and confuse busyness with a fulfilling life. The ignorance here is failing to recognize that excessive noise robs us of our soul. The outcome is clear. We seek peace, but only find more noise. The philosophical solution is a gradual return to reflection. Ask yourself, how many minutes each day do you genuinely dedicate to silence? Wisdom doesn't emerge from shouting, but from pausing. When confronting this noise, it's not enough to just turn off your phone. You must face the discomfort of your own mind. Meditating isn't about battling thoughts. It's about recognizing how addicted we are to them. This is the first step toward self-awareness. And you? Have you noticed how this invisible noise shapes your decisions without you realizing it? Share your thoughts in the comments. The mirror that frightens. Imagine a perfect mirror that reflects not just your face, but every detail of your soul. This is the effect of meditation, a direct confrontation with what you try to hide from yourself. Here's the crux. Many people avoid it, not because they don't know how to meditate, but because they're afraid to look. In everyday life, this mirror appears when, in the midst of attempting silence, uncomfortable memories, repressed anxieties, or unconfessed desires arise. The individual, used to filling every void with music, TV shows, or work, feels exposed in front of this reflection. And the first reaction is often to give up, saying, "I can't meditate." Socrates would provoke, "Know thyself." But do we really want that self-knowledge? Philosophy reminds us that ignoring what's within us is to live in the shadow of our own lives. Without reflection, we repeat unconscious patterns and confuse illusions with truths. The ignorance here is believing that silence is emptiness. The consequence is that we flee from ourselves, leaving our souls restless and unvirtuous. The solution is to embrace discomfort as a teacher. What hurts reveals what needs healing. It is in this mirror that true wisdom is born. As studies in psychology show, gradually facing our own pain, much like exposure therapy, strengthens the mind. Meditation, in this sense, is a laboratory for the soul, where we learn to transform fear into clarity. And you, have you ever tried to look into this inner mirror, even when the reflection seemed daunting? Let us know in the comments. The invisible prison. Imagine being in a cell with no visible bars. You walk, breathe, work, but everything is within limits you can't see. This prison is built by your own mental habits. With every comparison on social media, every automatic thought, you lay bricks in that invisible wall. When you sit down to meditate, you realize you're no longer free. You're shackled by your own mind. In modern life, this manifests as a productivity addiction. It's not enough to be present. You have to produce, post, prove. Even leisure becomes an obligation, with staged photos and moments turned into content. So, when you try to close your eyes, your brain demands, "Shouldn't you be doing something useful?" And silence is interrupted by the anxiety of not being productive. Plato spoke of the cave. Shadows projected that confused the prisoners, preventing them from seeing the truth. We too confuse notifications with presence, likes with affection, productivity with virtue. The result? A loss of inner freedom and an escape from reflection. The ignorance here is not noticing the prison. The consequence is living as a puppet to our thoughts, without an authentic soul. The philosophical solution is liberating awareness. Recognizing the shackles is the first step to breaking them. Sócrates would say that wisdom begins when we acknowledge our own ignorance. Research on habits shows that automatic behaviors can consume up to 40% of our day. This means that nearly half of our lives can be lived on autopilot. Meditation, in this light, is the key that reveals the invisible cell. But the question is, do you want to break free? And you? Have you recognized the invisible chains that control your routine without your awareness? Share your thoughts in the comments. The threatening void. Imagine holding an empty cup. You look at it and feel discomfort. It should be full. It should contain something. This is also how the meditation experience feels for many. The void of the mind, instead of being seen as fertile space, is perceived as a threat. The individual can't stand silence because they associate it with nothingness. And nothingness is frightening. In daily life, we see this when someone says they can't go 5 minutes without checking their phone. The silence of an elevator must be filled with a message, the pause in traffic with music, the wait at the doctor's office with quick videos. The void is seen as loss, as wasted time. And thus, reflection, which Sócrates considered the essence of life, is traded for constant distraction. Seneca wrote, "Life is long if you know how to use it." Yet we live as if every second needs to be filled with stimulation. The ignorance here is believing that the void is useless. The consequence is missing out on opportunities for self-knowledge and virtue. The philosophical solution is understanding that the void is not absence, but space for the soul to breathe. In psychology, studies on the hurry sickness show that the inability to handle waiting leads to chronic anxiety. Meditation, when faced with courage, is the antidote. It teaches us that the void is part of life and can be fertile. But this requires wisdom and willingness to question. The soul needs silence, just as the body needs rest. When we refuse this void, we fall into emotional exhaustion. Reflection, conversely, flourishes precisely in the pause. Only then do we discover that the void does not threaten us. It liberates us. And have you tried to transform a moment of silence into a space for discovery, instead of filling it with distractions? Share your thoughts in the comments. The unexamined life. Now we reach the crucial point. Sócrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Think of this statement as a blow. If you don't confront silence, if you don't dare to know yourself, your life risks becoming merely repetition, illusion, noise. What if everything you believe is just a reflection of social media? What if your identity is just a sum of unconscious habits? What if you've never truly known yourself? The ignorance here is fatal. Living without reflection is living without truth. The consequence is a superficial existence where the soul is shaped by external forces, advertising, comparisons, consumerism. The philosophical solution is harsh but liberating. Stop, question, look within. Plato, Aristotle, Seneca, Epictetus all echoed the same message. Virtue arises from self-knowledge, and self-knowledge only emerges from confronting silence. The drama is that we flee from what we need most. There's no middle ground here. You either face yourself or you'll remain trapped in illusion. Reflection is the door, philosophy is the key, and wisdom is the path. But the question is, will you have the courage to cross through? And have you dared to ask yourself if your life is truly examined, or if it's just being lived on autopilot? Share your thoughts in the comments. The Socratic midwifery of silence. Practice as a path. Imagine a river that is never the same. The water flows, the banks shift, and the light changes every moment. To meditate is to sit on the banks of this inner river and learn to observe the flow without trying to dam it. When we force it, the current sweeps us away. When we flee, we miss the scenery. Socrates called the art of midwifery the process of bringing forth the truth that already resides in the soul. Here, silence is the midwife. It's not about clearing the mind, but about cultivating wisdom amid the movement. The metaphor is simple yet demanding. You don't control the river, you only control your posture in observing it. In everyday life, this translates like this. You sit down to meditate, and suddenly you remember the pending email, the hurtful comment, the comparison that made you feel small. The algorithm may have shut down, but your internal questioning continues, fueled by years of habit. The ignorance. Thinking meditation means total absence of thoughts. The consequence. Frustration, giving up, labeling oneself as not cut out for this. The philosophical solution. Change your relationship with the flow. Observe, label, let go. It's like watching cars on a highway. You don't try to stop the traffic. You simply acknowledge each vehicle and return to your seat. An organic, effortless quote. Know thyself. By bringing this here, we realize that self-knowledge doesn't happen outside the flow, but within it. Aristotle helps. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. If the mind has grown accustomed to noise, virtue must be cultivated like training a muscle, with patience, repetition, and reflection. No one expects to run a marathon without having walked first. Why demand perfect silence in 3 tries? Philosophy is practice, not miracles. There's science behind this. Mindfulness practices show a reduction in reactivity and an increase in emotional regulation when done consistently. But beware of impatience. Seeking immediate results reinforces the same dopamine circuit that traps us. The ignorance, confusing spirituality with performance. The consequence? Turning meditation into just another productivity item. The solution? An honest pact with the truth. Today, I just sit and observe. 5 minutes of sincerity is worth more than 30 minutes of internal theatrics. Philosophy is examined life, not spreadsheets. A practical, simple, strategic example. One of 2 practical challenges. Choose an anchor object, your breath, a distant sound, the sensation of your hands. When a thought arises, silently say, think. When an emotion tightens, say, feel. Label, don't fight. Return to the anchor. This is reflection in action, recognizing the phenomenon without confusing it with yourself. As Epictetus said, it's not things that disturb us, but our opinion about them. By naming it, you let go. By letting go, your soul breathes. The bridge to daily life. Carry the same posture into the grocery line, at traffic lights, during difficult conversations. Micro-sessions of presence defeat the belief that meditation only counts on the mat. The ignorance. Believing attention is a luxury for those with time. The consequence? Remaining a hostage to your schedule and digital anxiety. The solution? Turning pauses into practice. Living pauses, which nurture the virtue of discernment. Slowly but surely, wisdom ceases to be a concept and becomes body, gesture, choice. Finally, a quote from Sócrates that serves as a compass. I know that I know nothing. Repeating it is not resignation, it's courage. It's the questioning that opens space for truth to emerge, unmasked. Thus, the river flows, and instead of drowning, you learn to sit by the banks with dignity. And you, are you willing to practice the gentle labeling of what arises, thinking, feeling, wanting, for a week, and observe what changes? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you've made it this far, you've realized the problem was never not knowing how to meditate. The issue is fearing the mirror, confusing noise with life, turning practice into performance. The Socratic exit is simple yet radical. To question yourself honestly, allow reflection to dispel illusions, choose virtue even when it hurts. Philosophy doesn't promise anesthesia. It offers clarity. Wisdom doesn't shout. It whispers. And that whisper, heard in silence, is your soul reminding you that truth is livable. So, leave a conscious mark. Comment on which Socratic question you'll carry into your week. Brief, direct, non-negotiable. And if this dialogue has helped you see the river from a new angle, subscribe and share with someone who needs to sit by the bank for 5 minutes today. Breathe, observe, name, let go. The next step may reveal something even deeper.